or missing in a war that the world's most optimistic analysts believed would be over in a matter of days. In conflict, and what has unfolded on those blood-soaked battlefields is something history books will struggle to contain. This is not just a war. This is the single deadliest conflict Europe has witnessed since the Second. It may be even worse than anyone is willing to admit. Welcome back to World Brief Daily. Today we are going inside the numbers, the staggering, almost incomprehensible casualty figures from 4 years. We will look at how both sides have manipulated the truth, why accurate counts are nearly impossible to obtain, and what those numbers reveal about the future of this conflict. If you are not yet subscribed to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we publish in-depth analyses like this every single day. You do not want to miss what is coming next. Let's go back to the very beginning. Russia launched what it called a special military operation against Ukraine. The word war was banned. Officially, it was a limited action, a quick strike, a political message. Moscow expectable, seize the capital, decapitate the government, install a puppet regime, and go home by summer. We know how that turned out. What followed instead was the collapse of one of the greatest military miscalculations, so severe that it defies easy comprehension. Both Moscow and Kiev went silent on their losses almost immediately. Russia had every political reason to suppress its casualty data, and so the world was left to piece together the truth from satellite imagery, social media posts, intercepted communications, and the brave work of independent journalists risking prison to count. The intelligence agencies had seen enough to issue their first major estimates. According to assessments from the United States government released at the time, Russia had suffered somewhere between 100,000 and 10 months of fighting alone. That includes both killed and wounded. Ukraine's losses during the same period were estimated to be comparable. These were numbers that stunned analysts, numbers not seen in World War, and then 2023 arrived and things got worse. As the war transitioned from a war of maneuver into a grinding attritional struggle, casualty rates did not slow down. They accelerated. In early 2023, Russia was losing approximately 700 soldiers every single day. That was between 200 and 300 more than the daily rate recorded in 2020. The equivalent of an entire battalion was being wiped off the map every 3 to 4 days. By mid-2023, U.S. officials were telling reporters that combined casualties for both sides had already million human beings killed or wounded in just over a year of conflict. The battle for Bakhmut stands as the defining symbol of this period. From August 2022 through May 2023, group mercenaries recruited directly from prison populations launched wave after wave of human assaults against Ukrainian defensive positions. The tactic was brutal and simple. Send men forward until the defense. Russia lost more than 20,000 soldiers just to capture that single city. A city of limited strategic significance. 20,000 lives for a handful of rubble. Here's where it becomes truly staggering. Commanders shifted strategy again. Military analysts began using the term meat grinder tactics to describe what was happening along the front lines. Small squads of poorly trained infantry were sent forward to prune the locations of defensive positions. Artillery and drones would then hammer those positions mercilessly. The next wave of infantry would advance, and so on. Brutal. Effective rate that would alarm any rational military planner. By April 2025, General Christopher Cavoli, who at the time served as Supreme Allied Commander Europe, testified that Russia had suffered more than 700 in the beginning of the invasion. The British Ministry of Defense, conducting its own independent analysis, placed the number even higher. Over 1 million casualties by June 2025. 1 million. Discrepancy between those two figures tells you something important. Tracking casualties in this war is not a precise science. It is an intelligence challenge of the highest order. But here's where things get murky, because understanding why the numbers are uncertain is just as important as understanding what the numbers actually are. Neither Russia nor Ukraine is providing honest, transparent casualty figures, full incentives to manipulate the narrative. And both have done so systematically since the first days of the invasion. Let's start with Russia, because the Kremlin's approach has been the most systematic and the most extreme. Classified all military casualty data as state secrets. Journalists who attempted to report on losses faced up to 15 years in prison under laws rushed through parliament in the early weeks of the war, rather than a special military operation became a criminal offense punishable by years in a penal colony. Major independent media outlets, Echo Moskvy, Dozd, and others, were shut down quickly since 2022, effectively silenced what remained of Russia's investigative press. The information that does emerge from official channels is carefully calibrated for domestic consumption. Russian state media regularly inflate Ukrainian casualty figures while dramatically understating Russian losses. As one example from December 2024, a source from Russia's Ministry of Defense publicly claimed these, while Russian losses remained, by implication, a fraction of that number. Independent analysts and Western intelligence agencies dismiss these claims as demonstrably false. But It issues them because they serve a political purpose. President Vladimir Putin has framed the entire conflict as a continuation of the Great Patriotic War against Nazi Germany, national identity. The Soviet Union lost an estimated 27 million citizens defeating Hitler. If that sacrifice was justified, Putin's logic goes, then modern Russia can accept whatever Ukrainian Nazis. It is a cynical manipulation of genuine historical trauma, but it resonates with significant portions of the Russian population, particularly older generations. In 2024 alone, according to reporting from multiple Russian financial analysts and budget documents reviewed by Western researchers, Russia allocated over 1.2 trillion rubles, roughly nation payments, to families of killed and wounded soldiers. This serves a dual purpose. It provides financial relief to families who might otherwise become vocal critics of the war, and it allows attention while keeping those numbers hidden from the Russian public and the world. Ukraine's approach has been more nuanced, but it has not been without its own manipulation. Kyiv initially kept its casualty figures. Releasing detailed loss data could give Russian intelligence officers valuable insights into the condition of specific units. But as the war continued, Ukraine found itself in an Western allies that the weapons and funding being provided were being used effectively. That meant publicizing Russian losses loudly and frequently, at the same time revealing both domestic morale and Western public support. The daily casualty tallies released by Ukraine's general staff have consistently shown Russian losses at levels that some Western intelligence, if not necessarily in their overall scale. By late December 2025, Ukraine's official figures claimed Russia had lost over 1,247,000 estimates, but likely includes soldiers wounded and returned to active duty multiple times, potentially inflating the total. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been particularly careful. He waited until February 2024, 2 full years into the war, before publicly acknowledging that 31,000 Ukrainian soldiers had been killed. Even at that point, many waited. When Zelensky updated the number to 46,000 killed in February 2025, the response from the intelligence community was similar, plausible as a lower bound, but almost certainly not at the time. Approximately half of Ukraine's wounded had recovered and returned to active duty, which further complicates any straightforward headcount. So where does the truth lie? Independent researchers have been working and deeply troubling. Mediazona, a Russian independent outlet operating largely in exile, has been working in partnership with BBC Russia and a volunteer network to compile a verified list of Russian showering social media posts, local news reports, regional government announcements, and court filings to identify named individuals confirmed killed. As of January 13, 2026, 106 Russian deaths by name. But, and this is critical, Mediazona openly acknowledges that their list represents only a fraction of total losses. Many families never publicly actively work to suppress this information. The real number of confirmed Russian dead is almost certainly far higher than their verified count. The most troubling piece of evidence to emerge came in late 2025, have been processing tens of thousands of lawsuits to declare soldiers missing or legally dead, a necessary step for families to access death benefits. By early December 2025, media court claims. Then, on December 26, 2025, Russian courts began systematically deleting these records from publicly accessible databases. The deletion itself was revealing, but even more, Minister Andrei Belousov, who noted that 48% of missing persons, roughly every second person, had been found. If approximately 90,000 court cases represented that implies there are at least 180,000 bodies still unrecovered on Ukrainian battlefields. 180,000 bodies still lying where they fell. Years of war, and the numbers have become truly astronomical. According to a comprehensive analysis published by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, in late approximately 1.2 million casualties since the invasion began. That figure includes between 275,000 and 325,000 soldiers killed in action. In 2025, 1,000 soldiers, averaging nearly 35,000 casualties per month. December 2024 marked what researchers believe was the single deadliest month of the entire war, with an average of 1,000 per day. Ukraine's total casualties, while smaller in absolute terms, are estimated at between 500,000 and 600,000, with 100,000 to 140,000 killed in action, 8 million people killed or seriously wounded. At the current rate of attrition, CSIS projects that combine casualties will cross the 2 million mark by spring 2026. Let that figure land for years. To put this in historical perspective, Russia's battlefield fatalities in Ukraine are more than 17 times greater than Soviet losses during the entire decade-long war in Afghanistan, Russian casualties across both Chechen wars combined. Russia has now lost more soldiers in Ukraine than in every conflict it has fought since the end of the Second World War combined. No major military power since 1945. Before we continue with the full breakdown of what these numbers mean for the future of the war, a quick reminder. If you are finding this analysis valuable, please hit World Brief Daily produces coverage like this every single day, and we do not want you to miss what is coming next. Now let us turn to a question that naturally follows from these numbers. If Russia has suffered this level, and how is Russia still fighting? When Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, it deployed approximately 190,000 soldiers. These were supposed to represent the best of the Russian military airborne divisions, Spetsnaz Special Operations Forces. The original plan called for a rapid decapitation strike against the Ukrainian government, a quick and relatively clean operation. Everyone, including the Kremlin, that the plan had failed catastrophically. Putin faced a stark choice: admit defeat and withdraw, or double down. He chose to double down, what it called a partial mobilization of 300,000 reservists. In practice, this mobilization was deeply unequal. According to reporting from multiple independent Russian journalists on ethnic minorities and men from Russia's poorest and most remote regions, the Far East, Siberia, and the North Caucasus. Casualty rates among minority groups significantly exceeded their traditional soldiers were not enough to replace the losses already sustained. So Russia turned to increasingly desperate measures. Convicted criminals, including murderers and rapists, were offered commuted sentences. The Wagner Group alone recruited more than 48,000 convicts directly from Russian prisons. Many of them were sent straight into the assault on Bakhmut. Those who survived and completed their contracts returned home. Some re-enlisted to avoid prosecution. The cycle repeated. By 2024, Russia had constructed what amounts to a war economy built around a permanent recruitment apparatus. Regional bonuses in some areas reached the equivalent of $40,000, a transformative sum in regions where average monthly salaries hover around $500. For men in economically military service became, in many cases, the most lucrative option available. According to figures cited by Russian government officials and reported by outlets including Reuters and the Financial Times, 1,000 new contract soldiers in 2023 and another 427,000 in 2024. In 2025, that number drops somewhat to approximately 400 minutes. As of early 2026, suggests Russia is currently recruiting between 30,000 and 40,000 new soldiers every month, just barely enough to replace battlefield losses. But these are only two. Most receive 3 to 4 weeks of basic training before being sent to the front. They are learning to navigate modern drone-saturated battlefields under live fire rather than in controlled weapon systems they have barely had time to practice with. And the gap between their capabilities and those of their more experienced predecessors is costing Russia dearly. The officer corps has been devastated. Open source intelligence analysts, more than 6,500 Russian officers had been confirmed killed by late 2025, with more than half of those being junior officers, lieutenants who translate strategic orders into tactical action. They are the connective tissue of any fighting force. Their deaths have left a void that abbreviated training programs cannot fill. 2 months of officer school before being handed command of troops in live combat. The results have been predictable. The Russian military that exists today looks nothing like the force that crossed the border in February 2020. Putin is claimed to have approximately 700,000 troops deployed in Ukraine as of late 2025, but it is qualitatively degraded in almost every meaningful respect. Units rely on brutation. Artillery support has become less precise. Communications are frequently compromised by Ukrainian electronic warfare. Logistics, always a Russian weakness, remain persistently broken. Military doctrine is supposed to emphasize has largely failed to materialize in the field. The equipment situation tells a similar story. According to multiple Western intelligence assessments reviewed by analysts, Russia had lost more than 43,800 main battle tanks by late 2025. That is more than Russia's entire pre-war active tank inventory. To compensate, Moscow has been pulling Soviet air storage, vehicles that in some cases date back to the 1960s. These ancient machines are being crewed by hastily trained recruits and sent into battle against modern Ukrainian anti-tank weapons systems, extensively in open source footage that has emerged from the front lines throughout 2025. Russia's defense industrial base cannot produce new main battle tanks fast enough to replace battlefield losses at vehicles, armored personnel carriers, and self-propelled artillery systems. Western intelligence analysts, citing current attrition rates, have projected that Russia could face a critical shortage of functional armored vehicles 7. So why, given all of this, has Russia not collapsed? Why, despite suffering casualties at more than double Ukraine's rate, is Russia still making territorial gains in strategic calculation? Russia's population is approximately 144 million people. Ukraine's pre-war population was roughly 37 million, a nearly 4-to-1 disadvantage. Million military-age males between the ages of 20 and 39. Ukraine has approximately 5 million in that same age bracket. Even with catastrophic losses, Russia can theoretically, simply because each Ukrainian soldier lost is proportionally far more damaging to Ukraine's fighting capacity than each Russian soldier is to Russia's. Moscow has calculated this explicitly. Every war pool shrinks. Every casualty Ukraine sustains is harder to replace. The Kremlin is betting that one of two things will happen. Either Ukraine will eventually run out of soldiers willing to fund its ammunition, will waver, and eventually falter. And yet Russia's supposed advantages in manpower and industrial capacity have not translated into the kind of decisive battlefield success that would justify Ukraine's defense-in-depth strategy has proven extraordinarily effective at multiplying Russian casualties. Elaborate trench networks, anti-tank obstacles, extensive minefields, and carefully positions where they can be shredded by artillery, drone strikes, and direct fire. The proliferation of first-person view drones, cheap, commercially available systems modified for military use, has as reported extensively by outlets including The Economist and Defense One throughout 2024 and 2025, vehicle movement within roughly 10 miles of the front has become nearly suicidal under command structure has proven catastrophically inflexible. Local commanders lack the authority to make meaningful tactical adjustments without approval from higher headquarters. By the time permission arrived, the rigidity has cost Russia countless opportunities and countless lives. Russia's logistics system, meanwhile, remains fundamentally broken. Ammunition moves through the chain eventually. Coordination between different types of military units, infantry, artillery, armor, air support, is chronically poor. Combined arms operations, which require precise synchronization, have largely failed to maintain morale. Soldiers recruited with cash bonuses and sent to the front with 3 weeks of training do not fight with the same conviction as men defending their homes and families. Russian units have experienced, most notably during Ukraine's incursion into Kursk Oblast beginning in August 2024, a dramatic moment when Ukrainian forces crossed into Russian territory itself. In the multiple correspondence on the ground and confirmed by Ukrainian military officials, over 1,000 Russian soldiers were captured. Moscow was forced to pull units from other sectors of the front, creating vulnerabilities that lead 11,000 North Korean troops to help reclaim its own territory. That fact alone deserves to sit with you for a moment. Russia, a permanent member of the UN Security Council and one of the world's North Korea to retake ground inside its own borders. The Kursk episode encapsulates everything that has gone wrong for Russia in this war. When the incursion began, it took over a month for Moscow. The response was slow, confused, and reliant on a patchwork of units pulled from elsewhere. It revealed a military that, for all its numerical size, is struggling to function effectively as a modern fight, constantly punched above its weight by out-innovating its larger opponent. Ukrainian forces pioneered the military application of commercially available drones modified for strikes and reconnaissance. They developed electronic ES navigation signals. They advanced the use of fiber optic controlled drones that are immune to jamming, a response to Russia's investment in electronic countermeasures. They have turned consumer electronics into Forbes Defense and multiple defense technology publications throughout 2024 and 2025. Ukraine's drone development ecosystem has produced systems that have destroyed billions of dollars worth of Russian accrete. Ukrainian innovation versus Russian mass defines the current state of the war, and it has implications that extend well beyond the battlefield. Russia is exhausting itself. Not just military, is under severe strain from 3 years of wartime spending, Western sanctions, and the cumulative damage of severing ties with European markets. As reported by Bloomberg and the Financial Times in late to just 0.6% in 2025. Inflation has remained stubbornly elevated. The defense industrial base faces critical shortages of precision components that were previously imported from place through parallel import schemes or domestic production. The financial reserves accumulated before the war are being drawn down at a significant rate to fund both military operations, and the enormous contradiction at the heart of Russia's position is this. It is winning in the narrow sense that it controls more Ukrainian territory today than it did a year ago. But it is losing in the broader sense that it is destroying its international standing in pursuit of that territory. The cost-benefit calculus, viewed from any rational perspective, is catastrophic for Moscow. And behind every projection, every intelligence assessment, there is a human being who is not coming home. The true death toll of the Ukraine war is not a number on a spreadsheet. It is the erasure of futures, hundreds of thousands of families, Russian and Ukrainian alike, who will carry the weight of this conflict for the rest of their lives. Whether the final combined count reaches 1.8 million or 2 million or beyond, each unit child, someone's parent, someone's friend, that is the real cost of this war. And it is a cost that both Russia and Ukraine continue to pay every single day with no end yet in the situation here at World Brief Daily, where we publish new in-depth coverage every single day. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so now and make sure notifications are enabled so you never miss an update. That the rest of the world is still struggling to fully understand.